After I discovered the HOA had shut off my water, I woke up in frustration and disbelief, but also with one crucial piece of information in my back pocket. I owned the well. That fact wasn't just water under the bridge, it was leverage. I walked into the kitchen, filled a cup with bottled water, and stared at it long enough to consider framing it. I contacted a local attorney, not to threaten, but to verify what I thought I already knew. That an HOA cannot legally shut off a homeowner's water if there's no specific authority in the governing documents, and even then it often runs afoul of state protections against disconnecting essential services like water. The lawyer confirmed it. Unless the CC and RS explicitly grant the HOA the power to shut off water, and that grant doesn't violate broader state regulations regarding utility cutoffs, the association's actions could be challenged, possibly even declared unlawful. Armed with that, I wrote the board a simple, calm email. You have shut off my water without legal authority and without due process. I own the well that supplies the neighborhood. Restore service immediately and provide documentation that you have the authority to act. I hit send and waited. Within minutes, literally, my phone started buzzing. But not with replies from the HOA. Neighbors. One after another, messages popped. Is this true? Did they really turn your water off? We're noticing low pressure too. Did they mess with the whole system? Are you okay? Everything spiked when someone in the neighborhood group chat posted my email thread, and within minutes, people started digging into their own HOA contracts, bylaws, and what rights they even had to water. Some were outraged. Some were confused. All were talking about it. And that's when the HOA started panicking. Because suddenly, instead of a single owner complaining about shut-off, the entire neighborhood was watching. Location. Community clubhouse. I didn't know what to expect, but I did know one thing. This was no longer a private dispute. The HOA president, Veronica, was no longer just dealing with me. She was dealing with an audience. I arrived 15 minutes early, partly because I like to be prompt, and partly because I knew a crowd would lend me strength. Sure enough, by 6:50 p.m., neighbors were streaming in, a few curious, a few angry, and many holding copies of their own deed restrictions and community covenants. When Veronica walked in, you could tell she smelled the tension. Her confident stride was tighter, like a CEO whose board is staring. Good evening, she said, clinging to her clipboard like it was something that still made sense. We're here to address the water management concerns. There were murmurs. Someone raised their hand. So you cut off one homeowner's water without transparent authority and didn't notify any of us. Veronica blinked. Yes, she said, overly slowly. We took action against delinquent accounts. Another neighbor stood up. I don't even owe you anything. Why is my water affected? Veronica fumbled. I waited until the room quieted. Let me clarify something, I said, stepping forward. I do own the well that feeds our community. That's recorded on the deed and easement language. You can't legally disconnect the source of the water I own, and even your own documents do not explicitly grant the board legal authority to cut off essential services like water without due process. There were audible gasps. Veronica's lips thinned. One neighbor held up his phone, showing pictures of his dry taps earlier that day. That's not just my house, he said. That's every house on the street. And that's when Veronica realized something worse than being challenged. She realized she had no control over the real infrastructure. Because if I owned the well, then their entire system relied on my water source, legally and physically, whether they knew it or not. It began like most disputes with a homeowners association, minor, bureaucratic, and completely absurd. My name is Alex Mercer, and I bought my house in Cedar Creek Estates 6 years ago because it was perfect. Quiet streets, big yards, and most importantly, a private well that pumped crystal clear water right into my home. The water was one of the things I loved most about the place. Crisp, clean, natural, never another bill for basic water out of the city system. At least, that's what I thought. For the first few years, everything was calm. I paid HOA dues on time, attended the occasional meeting, no holiday inflatables after January, and otherwise kept to myself. Then one Tuesday morning in early March, I came downstairs and turned on the tap. Nothing. Just silence. No water.
No trickle.
No hum of the well pump. At first, I thought it was a simple outage. Maybe the pump needed resetting. But when I went outside and flipped the panel, the breakers were intentionally shut off. My gut dropped. Because this wasn't a blackout. This was intentional. I called my neighbor across the street. You have water? I asked. He hesitated. Yeah, why? I walked back inside. No water. Then my phone buzzed. I opened it. It read, due to unresolved community assessment balances and water usage policies, your access to HOA-controlled water services has been suspended effective immediately. Please contact the board to resolve this matter. That was the problem. According to them, I owed the Association for Water Usage and Community Assessments, even though I wasn't on the municipal system. I got water from my own private well. Something was very wrong. So I called Veronica. Her voice was brisk, authoritative, and not at all apologetic. Yes, Mr. Mercer, she said, we've followed all procedures listed in the Community CC and RS. We have the authority to suspend water access for overdue balances. I swallowed hard. Because not only did I not owe anything, I never received a single bill related to water usage through the HOA. I have a private well, I said calmly. I haven't owed the association water bills in the 6 years I've lived here. She paused, then said, that well water is connected to the HOA system. Therefore, you share responsibilities for distribution costs. I asked for proof. She sent spreadsheets, charts, figures. The board's logic was convoluted. And despite how unbelievable it sounded, they had some governance document they believed backed them, so they shut off my water. I sat there in silence, waterless, angry, and trying to understand how my own water supply had just been legally suspended. Even worse, they didn't realize something big. That afternoon, while spraying dirt from the backyard with bottled water, I walked over to the old well house, a wooden shed that had sat in the corner of my property since before I bought the place. I'd always assumed it was just some unused relic, maybe an old pump house from before Cedar Creek Estates had its water infrastructure developed. But something flickered in my memory, the property survey I'd filed away when I purchased the house. I dusted it off. There it was, highlighted in little black and white text. Wait, that sounded important. So I went inside, pulled up the legal description of my title, and read it word for word. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't just a well. By deed and easement, I, and only I, owned exclusive legal rights to the well and its distributed water lines on my parcel. The HOA used those lines for neighborhood irrigation and distribution, but the actual water source and legal ownership belonged to me. Water rights can be complicated in shared communities, especially when private wells feed multiple properties. But in this case, the deed was clear. Suddenly, shutting off my water sounded like a legally disastrous move. Because whoever controlled the well controlled the neighborhood's water supply. At that moment, a plan began to form. Confrontation, papers, and a major miscalculation. I called Veronica back. This time, my tone was measured but firm. Do you realize, I said, that I own the well that provides water to these properties? You may manage the distribution lines under the HOA, but the actual water source is my property, right? She paused so long I thought the phone line had dropped. No, she finally said. That cannot be true. Check the deed, I said. Check the easement. I will speak with the board, she replied curtly. And that's when things escalated fast. Within 24 hours, the entire board was assembled at my driveway, clipboards, printed documents, and tension the size of a small storm cloud hanging over their heads. They were arguing legal language, CC and RS, shared water infrastructure, distribution costs, but none of them had bothered to read the deed language about the well itself. They were operating off assumptions, not actual legal rights. And that was their first big mistake. In reality, homeowners associations do have certain powers, including enforcing community rules, collecting dues, and even suspending amenities in some circumstances, but shutting off water is a different matter entirely. Courts have said that unless the governing documents explicitly authorize this, and state and local laws allow it, An HOA generally cannot legally shut off a homeowner's water service as a collection tactic or punishment. Water is a basic necessity, and most jurisdictions treat access to it as protected, requiring due process and specific legal authority before termination. Even if water is provided through HOA infrastructure, the association's powers are rarely so broad as to allow unilateral shutoffs without clear documented authority. But here's the twist. In Cedar Creek Estates, the infrastructure, pipes, treatment, and distribution to other homeowners was intertwined with my well. Technically, the HOA depended on me for water delivery, which meant any attempt to shut off my water service risked not just cutting off my access, but jeopardizing everyone's water supply. And that's when panic began. Panic sets in late that night. I received a county government notice in my inbox. Land use inspectors requesting documentation proving ownership of the well, water rights, and easements before any further HOA action could proceed. In other words, officials were watching, and the HOA's authority was now seriously in question. Veronica's calm confidence evaporated. Instead of fighting me, she started sending out messages to other homeowners that read more like damage control. We are currently reviewing water rights and ownership structures. There may be temporary service interruptions. This was HOA corporate speak for "we've screwed up," because now all of Cedar Creek Estates depended on my well, legally, practically, and literally.